President, who is the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Tell us, sir, if you will, very difficult to get any numbers on those injured and killed, both at the Pentagon and up in New York. Do you have any preliminary estimates, and what can you tell us about the federal response to help with the rescue effort?
It's premature for any numbers, John. I can tell you, I can tell the country that we're doing what we need to do. Either our teams are already on the ground in New York and obviously here at the Pentagon, or they're on their way and will be there overnight.
4 aircraft, commercial aircraft hijacked in a single day. The American people watching the horror of this have to ask their federal government how.
Well, it is a stunning incident. It really is. The how and why will come later. Right now we're...
The utter horror of people watching both live and on television. Utter horror of people watching both live and on television.
We're concerned with recovery. Those folks that are missing, their loved ones tonight that won't be home, those are the folks we need to keep in our minds and in our hearts. We'll get to them as quickly as we can.
That I have talked to this morning, they're filled with fear.
You can see people running in sheer terror.
There's fear out there. That I have talked to this morning, they're filled with fear.
You can see people running in sheer terror.
There is tremendous fear out there.
Back in with James Kallstrom, who was formerly of the FBI. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. Well, sir, can you explain to the American public how it is possible that 4 commercial airliners were hijacked in a several-hour period?
I don't think we can explain that right now, Paula.
The utter horror of people watching both live and on television.
That I have talked to this morning, they're filled with fear.
You can see people running in sheer terror.
There is tremendous fear out there.
I mean, we'll be answering those questions in the future. I can tell you this, that everyone in law enforcement and the intelligence agencies prayed and hoped that something like this would never happen. It has happened. I thought the President gave a great speech tonight. I was particularly impressed. It's a bit redundant from the other speakers, but his discussion of there will be no difference between those that committed this horrendous act and those that supported, harbored, assisted this horrific act. I think that's a very, very key point.
Who might be harboring them in the future? I worry a little bit that the bin Laden solution is too glib, too easy for us. We have to get deeper. We have to drill down and find out what has really happened here, what violated our security, why we had so little intelligence about this. We have a whole big issues ahead of us. All of the old issues, I think, are going to fade until we resolve this particular problem.
This is a new chapter tonight, and whatever may have been the policy in the past, the action today, I think, has changed that forever.
All right, we want a better world for these kids, and this isn't it.
That I have talked to this morning, they're filled with fear. There is tremendous fear out there.
That went into the World Trade Center. When you see that, Commissioner Kelly, when you see these horrific pictures that none of us can comprehend,
How do you explain what this enormity of this tragedy was?
Well, you can't explain it. It is, the enormity is just mind-boggling. I think we think in the abstract of terrorist attacks, but when you see this, when actually you see the film of Plane 1, Plane 2, and then the collapse of the buildings, I mean, the world witnessed this. Terrorist attacks often happen in the dark of night, but here, everybody throughout the world, the civilized world, has seen this, and it's just incredible.
And is it fair to assume, Commissioner Kelly, that life in New York City will never again be the same?
Well, I don't know. New Yorkers, Americans are pretty resilient, pretty tough. I think certainly for the short term, life is going to change significantly. But I hope it doesn't change too drastically, because then the terrorists have won. They've accomplished what they set out to do, and that is to significantly alter our way of life. So I think we have to certainly pay much more attention in the short term to security issues. It appears that security at the airports was obviously breached to get these hijackers on the aircraft. I think tomorrow you'll see that significantly strengthened throughout the country. I think life in New York, certainly below 14th Street for the foreseeable future, is going to be different. Tremendous cleanup that has to be done. There's no power in much of that area. There are gas leaks that are happening now. It's a dangerous environment. It is certainly for the foreseeable future going to change life in New York. I hope it's not permanent.
Thank you. We have heard for the last 13 or 14 hours that this is, in the worst sense, a historic day. We thought we ought to talk to two people to give us some historical context. From Washington, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer David McCullough is with us. David, you're with us here. How you do?
Yes, I am.
And here in New York, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist David Halberstam. Mr. McCullough, this country has always considered itself blessed, protected by two oceans. In World War II, nothing happened here. Nobody was injured by bombs. When a strike like this happens, and it has happened in the past to Americans, does it do something to us, to our sense of who we are and how protected we are?
Well, it's almost certainly going to bring us closer together. It's going to make problems that we thought were of great importance seem less by far. We've never had violence of this kind happen on our home ground. War brought to our own home place this way since the Civil War. The Johnstown flood, the Galveston flood, two of the worst disasters in the country's history, will probably seem less than this when the awful toll is added up. I think it's really worse than Pearl Harbor because it was an attack on innocent civilians, not on a military target. The world is not at war, at least in the usual sense, as it was in 1941, when war was very much in the air, even if we weren't in it. And the scale of it all, and the fact that our own equipment, our own airplanes, our own citizens flying in those airplanes were used as human bombs against our own great structures, the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. Heroic New York, high-rise New York, was seen to collapse before our eyes, unimaginable. It's a treachery, it's a day of horror unlike anything we've ever experienced in our whole time as a nation.
And David Halberstam, that brings another point up. We've often talked, after the end of the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union, that the end of history, somebody called it in the book. We were only at a time when small events would move us.
Oh, no. New chapter in history. I mean, it was, the Cold War had its own fears, a bipolar world, but in some ways it was a safer world. I mean, it was more controlled. Now it's more fragmented, it's more volatile, and this is an act of war, and a kind of war to which we are sort of uniquely vulnerable because the magnetic field of our power and our intelligence is very frail as you get deeper into what is apparently the place of origin of this terrorism. So there's, you know, how do we manifest our power, which is very real, in a place so far in distance? It's a very, you know, you start the day numbed by it, and then the magnitude of what it means and how it changes life. A free and open society being challenged by this kind of terrorism to continue the kind of the freedom of movement and access, which is so elemental to the way we live.
And David McCullough, there have been times when we have been faced by war that we have, at least temporarily, given up some of our civil liberties. Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus in the Civil War, the internment of the Japanese. Are we at a different point now in our history, or are we likely to respond in some measure by restricting our own freedom to get some more security?
Well, I really do think things will change after this. It's inevitable. This is a day that will change history. It will change it in some ways for the better, but I'm afraid that will also mean a curtailing, a trimming up, some maybe even a vitiating of the open society as we know it. And that's a sad time, but it's the reality. It stresses our vulnerability in a way that we've not experienced in our past as a nation. It happened here. Any of us could have been on those planes. Any of us could have been, and we all were, in a sense, going to work in those buildings this morning. And as David Halberstam just said, it's the accumulative effect of the day as it's progressed on all of us, on the whole country, so that tonight we really feel the weight.
You can see people running in sheer terror.
As others fought back tears.
Obviously, one of the things was getting to Henry, and seeing Henry is you want them to have a better world than we had, and I'm scared, but it's forever changed.
There is tremendous fear out there.
It's a vicious attack upon New York. It's an attack upon America. It's an attack upon the whole concept of freedom and our way of life. And we cannot let these attacks succeed.
War. We said this in 1976 in my report, and the difficulty is, of course, with terrorism you're fighting phantoms.
Is it of such a magnitude that it changes the way we think about our personal freedoms in this country? We change so many things, like World War II, the U.S. entering World War II. People gave up their jobs and marched off to war. The entire country did a 180-degree turn on December 8th, 1941. Is it of that magnitude in this country?
I believe in a way it is, Tim, but
Utter horror of people watching both live and on television.
Well, this is a horrible attack, and one that is despicable and really unthinkable in its magnitude. We will get through this, and we will continue to have a great and free country, state, and society.
One man we talked to likened his reactions today to Pearl Harbor.
It was the same kind of attack as it was this morning. It would probably kill more people this morning in the buildings than we did in those attacks in Pearl Harbor, but same kind of feelings.
Bringing out